Hello, everybody. I'm Derek Arden, and welcome to another edition of Monday Night Live. We got on a favourite of ours on tonight, Shelley Bridgman. Let me tell you a little bit about Shelley's extraordinary life. Shelley ran a travel business in taking people to 60 different destinations and hired Concorde on 30 occasions to take people across the North Sea up a corridor where you're allowed to fly at Mach 1 to the Heineken brewery, to the Carlsberg brewery. I always get Heineken and Carlsberg muddled up, forgive me for that, in Copenhagen. When Shelley changed her gender, she lost her business, went bust at that time, and she'll share that with us. And then joined our Dunbar to selling life insurance. Met someone who mentored her to become one of the best salespeople in the company. Then took a master's in psychology, in psychotherapy and psychology. And then in the extraordinary issue that she shared with me on Friday, took the government to the European Court of Justice after 14 years. Welcome, Shelley. Thanks so much for joining us, and tell us about your extraordinary story.
Thanks, Derek. You've just told it now, so I think we can just have a chat. And what I want, when Derek spoke to me about this, I thought I wanted to really share something that might be of value. And in fact, my life experiences have taught me that there are really only four things that matter. And I want to share them with you. Use the acronym FACT, because it is a fact. And we all get a chance to experience these four things, and sometimes we grab it, sometimes we don't. And I'm going to share just two experiences really to illustrate the point, because Derek mentioned the travel business, and it was at a time when people were flying all over the place. I used to do something called incentive travel, where we put groups together, anything from 20 to 300 at a time. And we were chartering aircraft all over the place. And one day, my contact in one of my client companies said to me, I want to do something that will really blow their socks off. He said, I'd love it if Concorde sounds good, but of course that would cost a fortune. We could never do that. So I went away and checked it, spoke to my contact, and I was surprised it was expensive, but not off the wall. So we chartered it. It was so successful, people were killing to sell their products to get on it. And we ended up, I think it must have been 30, 40, 50 times we chartered the aircraft. I was very lucky. I used to take my passport into the office on a Friday, and I'd make a phone call at 10 o'clock. And if there were a couple of empty seats, I could hop on it and go to New York for the weekend. So I was living a life of pure sort of luxury, but it was all a bit of an illusion, really, because I was having a nervous breakdown in the background. And when I finally plucked up the courage to do what I'd put off all my life and to change gender, it didn't go down too well. It was the 1980s, and it's fashionable now. It wasn't very fashionable then. So people didn't take too kindly. And my clients just disappeared within about a week. And one of them, from a particular car company, and I won't tell you who it was, said to me, and this was a typical response, we've loved the work that you've done, but we think it's time for a change, because that was the ultimate irony, that phrase, time for a change, because we couldn't have our brand associated with somebody like you. So literally liquidated it. I had about 14 or 15 employees, and it was gone almost within a few weeks. So that was what I called that's the F in fact. I don't use the word failure anymore, but we all fall down at some point. And when you're lying on the ground, you have a choice. You either stay lying on the ground or you do something and you get up. And I've learned that taking action is more important than having a strategy and getting it right. Because until we take action, we don't know what the hell's going to happen. I had two young children, no means of an income, was unemployable. Every time I tried to speak to one of the recruitment companies, they were always busy. And somebody put a pension plan in place in my company, and they said to me, if you work hard, you could make money doing what I do. So being sensible and needing money, I took a job without a salary. And I was selling life assurance as a commission-only salesperson. And I just sat there on the phone, cold calling, started work at 8 in the morning to beat the gatekeeper, and finished at 10 o'clock at night when you weren't allowed to phone people anymore. But what happened was, and this is the biggest lesson I've ever learned really, and it's happened several times, but when we take action, good people show up. If we do something and people see that we're having a go at it, they always show up. Now, whether we take the offer or we ignore it is up to us. And sometimes we have to be careful where we take the offer up. But I was working for this company, and I think they could see that I was trying really hard, although I wasn't very successful. And along came an amazing man called John, who was at the time the most successful person in the life industry, bought and sold practices for millions. And he wanted to mentor 4 people, and I was chosen as one of them. And I just figured if this guy had made millions, if I just do what he does, I think they call it NLP, in NLP, we call it mirroring, it might work. So he used to get me to go in at 7:30 so that I could pick up the phone. And in those days, you know, we didn't have the internet, we could get through to people. And bit by bit, it started to work. And what interested me was the other people that were invited into the group dropped out after a couple of weeks because they didn't want to do what he was telling us to do. But John was an amazing man, and he was so pleased in the end with the results that I got. He got me to fly up to Newcastle to speak at a conference. And I said, "Lion, I can't speak. You know, I've never spoken at a conference." He said, "Don't worry, I'm just going to interview you so we can tell everyone what you've done, because they won't believe it coming from me. But if they see that it's worked with you, it'll mean something." And at the same time, my manager had said to me, "You need to be doing presentations." I said, "I can't, I'm petrified. I can't do public speaking." He said, "Well, you're going to have to." So he got me to join Toastmasters, and which most of you will be familiar with. Toastmasters, where you learn to speak. And I'd been there a few months, and there was a humorous speech contest, and I went into it and I won it. And then I went to the area, then the region. And in the end, I was in the final of the GB after dinner speaking contest, or humorous speech contest. And I didn't win it, but I was runner up. And one of the judges said to me, by the way, the winner was from Ireland. So in my view, I was the UK winner. It's a nice reframe. And said, "You know, that was funny. You should do stand-up comedy and, you know, maybe try and speak at conferences." So I did. And doing comedy was really not a love, but just something I wanted to do to prove that I could stand up and do it. So I did, and it started to take off. I won a couple of competitions, ended up doing 5 one-woman shows at Edinburgh and a week off Broadway in New York with a show that I'd written, and also took the same show to Rome. But I knew deep down it wasn't really meant to be what I was supposed to be doing. And it was taken out of my hands. In 2016, I had a minor surgery and had a cardiac arrest on the operating table, which left me with a heart defect, and I couldn't work late in the evenings. But I don't want to get too much into that. It's a side issue. But it was somebody telling me this is not what you're supposed to be doing. And so I couldn't cope with the physicality of it. But getting back to John, what he also did, he was so pleased with what I'd done with him. He gifted me a weekend for this young guy called Tony Robbins, who was doing his first UPW in London. So I went, and I was mesmerized by it. I thought, you know, I'm going to learn this stuff. So I started studying counseling and psychotherapy. And that was always in the background, running along as a sort of second occupation. But it was very empowering for me to start to learn how the mind works, because I'd always thought I was insane. I literally did think I was mad. And what I learned with doing therapy was that you could actually make a bit of a difference for people. So John was my connection, which was the third stage. But transformation happens for us when we try and work with other people and do something for other people. And that was my fourth lesson. Because you're only fulfilled, really, I think, if you can see other people changing. And if you can see other people making, and you're making some kind of difference with them. And you're all in this room capable of doing that. And I know most of you do. I don't know all of you well enough, but I know you do. And, I studied, and, I'd left school at 14 without any exams, and I got a master's in psychotherapy. I now do coaching as well. But it all came from that experience of being kicked in the teeth, as it were, and nearly losing everything. By the way, slightly amusing story. I got a letter saying that I had 2 months to pay the debt to a certain bank. And in 1989, it was 180,000 that I owed them because I'd signed personal guarantees. It doesn't sound a lot if you say it quickly. It was quite a lot in 1989. And Derek's horrified with this aspect, but I burst into his room one day, slammed my fist down on the table.
This is the bank manager, is it? This is the bank manager.
Sorry, the bank manager spilt his coffee everywhere and said, "Look, you're not taking my house. I've got a plan," which I did have. And I said, "Look, I could give you £120,000 now." And I was about to say, "Pay the other 60." Derek's horrified by this. "I'll pay the other 60 over a period of time." But I got as far as saying, "I can give you 120,000 now." He said, "Okay." So he talked himself out of 60 grand by interrupting me because I was about to say that I'd pay the rest over a period of time. Now you know why Derek was horrified, the master of negotiation. But so they're the four elements, really. And it really all came together for me just 3 years ago, finally, because one of the things that I had a big problem with was that because I wouldn't divorce my partner when I changed gender, I couldn't get legal recognition. And when it came to wanting benefits or being able to get pensions, I was a sort of non-person until I either annulled the marriage or just, or walked away. And I wasn't prepared to annul it. So I went to a tribunal in London and I lost. And the person at the head of the trial, I lost on I got a letter about 6 months later saying, "You've lost. There's no point in appealing because the law's clear. But if you want to take it further, there's an upper tribunal." So I did. I appealed. I wasn't going to take that from them. And at the same time, I was told that you can have legal representation. Well, I didn't have any money. So I went as a pro bono unit in Chancery Lane in London, where you can apply to have a pro bono lawyer. And a few weeks after filling out the forms, I got an email from a lady called Kerry, and she said, "Look, I've read about your case. Would you like to come and see me?" So I did. And she said, "Look, I'll take it on." So we lost at the upper tribunal. And again, they said, "There's no point in appealing because the law is clear." So we appealed. There's a pattern emerging here. And when we were building up to going to the High Court, which was the next stage, she said to me, "Look, I need a solicitor. So I'm going to see if we can find one. But if you want to get one that doesn't cost anything, then, go to the pro bono unit." 24 hours later, I got a call from a solicitor, and I hadn't approached anybody, saying, "Look, I've heard about this and we'd like to offer our services." So him and his assistant came on board. And at the High Court, we lost again. And we got leave to appeal at the Court of Appeal. And when we went to the Court of Appeal, Chris, the solicitor, said, "Look, we need a heavyweight." And we ended up getting one of the leading probably the leading barrister in the United Kingdom. And he joined us as well. So now we're a team of 4. And the Court of Appeal rejected the case, but we went to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court then sat, and there were 5 judges with a view to, there's an odd number so you get a result, but actually they deferred it to the European Court of Justice. Now at this point, this whole process had taken 11 years. You can't rush these things. And if you've ever seen Bleak House or read Bleak House, you know, you'll understand how slow this process can be. So we went to Luxembourg. I actually flew over. I wasn't going to be speaking, but these people were working for nothing. So I went with them. And there I was in the European Court of Justice in the major court. If you can imagine an arc at the back with 17 judges, all in their robes with their wigs, lots of officials. Then in the front, the room was divided down the middle, and there were lots of sort of officials in the front bit. And then at the actual front of the court itself, where people were sitting, on the other side of the room, where I think there were about 8 barristers in their wigs and finery, about 3 rows of solicitors, loads of hangers-on from Department of Work and Pensions, and about 50 or 100 people on that side with various journalists. But I had anonymity been granted, so they couldn't report my name in the case. On my side of the court were my 2 amazing barristers, 2 solicitors, and me, and about 95 spare seats. So I looked across and I thought, well, the only way to confront this is to sit right on the aisle in the middle so that I could look over at them. And every time a derogatory term was used to describe me, I could feel the eyes kind of looking over. So I would swivel round and smile. And I realized in that moment, and I kind of coined this phrase, I probably picked it up from somewhere else, that shame needs the oxygen of secrecy. So as I looked across at these people, any shame that I felt about who I was had gone. And it was an enormously empowering moment, because when I first walked in and saw this bank of people, I could have thought, we've got no chance. But actually, if you think about it, they must have been running scared. They knew that they had a case on their hands. And a year later, the result came through and we'd actually won the case. And the bit about that, you know, the failure was the recognition. The action was to go to a pro bono court or let it go. The connection was these amazing people showing up. But the biggest lesson for me with all of that is that people only show up when you're in the arena. They don't turn up when you put something on paper to say, look, I'd be interested in you getting involved. They need to see that you're actually doing something. So apart from me getting some financial benefit and a moral victory, the law became binding in 17 countries. So we actually were able to do something that stands the test of time. So to sum up, for me, we all fall down. I don't call it failure, but we all fall down. You can choose to do nothing or act, and don't wait till you've figured it out. Get in the game is my advice. Otherwise, you don't learn anything. Good people somehow show up. There's a cliche, isn't there? When the pupil's ready, the teacher arrives. I don't know who said that. It wasn't me, sadly. It's a great expression. And then you can make changes. But until you try and do something for somebody else, whether it's a psychotherapist or coaching or whatever, and if you're giving a real benefit, not only do you help somebody else, but you transform as well. And I work a lot as a coach with the B Corps movement because I'm very inspired by that. You know, governments aren't going to fix anything around the world. Entrepreneurs will figure out how to get rid of plastic. You know, it's not going to be a government minister. So I think that's something that I can get behind. I mean, you've all got different things. I know a lot of you in this room are all doing amazing work. But they're the 4 things that I've learned, and I can take that into any area of my life, and I believe you can as well.
Fantastic, Shelley. Thank you for sharing that. I've made loads of notes and I'm going to just read some of them out because it's fantastic. So you left school at 14, you
Yeah,
got married at 21 to your childhood sweetheart, and you're still married, and you've got four grandkids, two daughters,
three
three,
grandkids, two daughters and three grandchildren.
and they all love you to bits.
I hope they do.
They won't get any money off you as you're rolling in it after all this woman's pension. That's fantastic. And you did a master's in psychotherapy. That was a bit after 3 days at Tony Robbins. And for the people that didn't know what UPW is, that's Tony Robbins's
Yeah.
famous weekend seminar, Unleash the Power Within.
I should say I don't really follow that teaching anymore, but it was just the fact that there was this person doing it, you know. I mean,
Mm.
and we're all familiar with different sort of self-help approaches or whatever you want to call it, personal development. But that
Mm.
was the one that kind of got me thinking about the whole thing.
Clearly, that bank manager hadn't been on one of the courses I ran for banks at one stage, and he accepted your 120,000 rather than keeping quiet and saying anything else. If he'd have said anything else, you'd have spilled the beans, wouldn't you?
Oh God, yeah. I was thinking every time I go to tell that, your face appears in my memory somewhere. Think how horrified you would look.
It's pretty amazing, isn't it? That I love the expression when you're in the arena, people show up to help you. Um, what did I remember you told me a story when you were at Luxembourg Airport flying back. Kerry,
Oh yeah.
Kerry was the barrister, was she that who
She was the
helped?
first barrister. She was a QC or KC now, but she was a junior barrister when we started the thing. And
And
yeah,
yeah,
she paid me a compliment because I said to her in the airport, we didn't know the result then, but we knew that was as far as we could take it. You can't go anywhere else after the European Court of Justice. And I said, look, you know, none of this would have happened without you. What made you stick with this? And she said, well, I think it was the second time I met you. I looked into your eyes and I knew you wouldn't quit. So I thought it was worth running with it.
I think there's a phrase about quitters, isn't there, as well? And absolutely. And I love the expression, which I haven't heard, and clearly you made it up. You're going to patent it probably because I'll be stealing it, and Esther will be stealing it as well if we're not careful. Shame needs the oxygen of security.
Secrecy, yeah.
Secrecy. Okay, secrecy. Yeah, no, that's fantastic. So, and what about this John guy? I mean, there were certain people that showed up in your life. It
Oh,
cost.
he was amazing. He was yeah, he was, I mean, he was a lovely guy. In fact, one of the nicest things about him, I remember we were flying up and it was at the time of the Balkans, you remember the war in Yugoslavia or former Yugoslavia. And he'd created a charitable fund, you know, to help with the chaos. And I said to him, you're clearly passionate about this. Why are you so passionate? And he said to me, I'm a Jew and I was born in Berlin in 1933. How do you think I respond to the phrase ethnic cleansing?
Mm,
And that was his motivation. That's what
fantastic.
got him out of bed in the morning.
Jill wants to know what the point of the law was that you got changed in 17 countries.
Well, the fact that I didn't need to, it stopped being annulment, didn't need to get divorced to get legal recognition. And the law has changed now, and you don't need to go through all of that. But at the time, that's what the law stated. And so I won the right for legal recognition without ending the marriage. That was essentially what we were fighting. But
So you
it got a bit more complicated than that.
you got a woman's pension at that point, which you were entitled to, and
Yeah, it was never about the money though. It was about
no,
the recognition. Yeah.
no, I understand that, but you must have got a lot of money for a lot of people that don't know what Shelley Bridgman did for them.
Yeah, well, they do. There were a few, but yeah, not that many. That was the daft thing about it. You know, there were about 10 of us, I think, in the end. So it cost them 100 times more than that for the legal costs. But, you know, when I looked at the people, there were people from civil servants and all sorts on a jolly in Luxembourg. But the other, you just reminded me now, coming back on that plane, I had a Monty Python moment on the tarmac. London City Airport, if anybody knows it, it's a small airport and they have tiny jets, you know, only seat about 40 people, I think. And you get your luggage off the plane. And as I was getting my bag, this man walked over to me, didn't recognize me. He put his hand up, shake my hand, and he said, "I just want to wish you well." And I realized he was the head QC for the opposition. So he clearly was doing his job, but I think deep down kind of almost wanted me to win. And I said to him, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't recognize you without your clothes on." And as I said it, a nun was walking past us and I saw her head swivel round. That's why I call it a Monty Python moment. You know, you couldn't write that really.
Oh no, that's fantastic. We're nearly out of time, Shelley. Remind us and remind everybody watching this what your what FACT stands for. FACT.
Well, the F is falling down, not failure. Action is to take action, of course. C is connection. And T is what it all leads to, transformation.
Fantastic. Shelley Bridgman, thanks for joining us. If anyone hasn't read Shelley's book, it is a fantastic book. It's a real eye-opener to life and things that go on in life. And I know Shelley's going to write another book shortly about her experience going to the European Court of Justice, and we look forward to reading that, Shelley, and having you back on the program. Can I ask everybody on Monday Night Live to give Shelley the usual vote of thanks? Shelley Bridgman, thanks for joining Monday Night Live.
Thank you.